I failed at everything that I wanted to do and everything I wanted to be. We've come a long way. Welcome to my Pirate News Show, and today I want to talk about where I've been. There's a song on my last project called Never Going Home Again. For those who haven't heard it, I'll just kind of give a little bit of backstory. I moved out to LA a few years ago and, had some great opportunities to work with some amazing people, very talented people. And, it felt like a dream. In a lot of ways it was. But then I began to struggle. I was crashing at a significant other's place. Nothing was really moving the way I wanted it to. Basically, it led to me having to come home. And I remember when I came home, I was completely depleted. I've dealt with on and off depression for most of my life, but I think coming home and the year and a half that followed was probably the lowest I can ever remember myself being. Right after I came home, a relationship with the person I was staying with ended. And I always describe that year like I felt like I was on fire, like physically in my body. Like I was so hurt by just all the things that were happening in my life at that time. I had put out a project a little after that, and I was so burnt out I couldn't even follow through on all the things I wanted to do for it. Like I did a couple shows. I was burnt out on, the social media aspect of it. I was just happy to finally have it out, and I really just needed to sit down, It was a very, very, very humbling and difficult period of my life because it felt like I failed at everything that I wanted to do and everything I wanted to be. And beyond that, I didn't have the energy to get up and jump right back into trying to achieve those things again. Like I couldn't create. I could barely enjoy life at that time. So yeah, I came back home to be with my parents and my siblings as well. And I really just started to slowly build myself back up. I'm going to start referring to the years before I felt happy again, the desert period. It kind of just came to me, I don't know, a few minutes ago, just to call it that, for a couple reasons. One, I felt like I was wandering through life without any type of real, not direction, but more of like, I don't know when I'm going to feel happy again. And it felt like it was going to be forever. Like I would literally have days where I'm like, I feel like I'm not going to feel happy ever again. It'd be, in my mind, I knew I was going to be okay, but like my being physically felt like I was never going to be happy again. Man, that was terrifying because, what does that mean for your life when you feel like you're never going to be happy again? Like that can lead to a lot of destructive behaviors that I did not want to turn to or feel like that was my only way to feel okay, So that's one reason. When does this end? Two, like I said this before, I felt like my body was on fire. I had put myself in a position where if I did not blow up and become this super commercially successful artist, I was not going to be happy because of the sacrifices I was making, some of the situations I put myself in. There's probably some impatience in there. There's some I'm just gonna make the sacrifice now because it's gonna work out for me later, when really I shouldn't have been making some of the sacrifices I was making, not really knowing what my needs were and not knowing how to fulfill them for myself. So that led to me leaning on a lot of people really heavily. That was, I don't know, I feel like that was like a two-sided thing where I learned to accept help, which is something I've never been good at. But also the other side was I shouldn't have put myself in a position where I needed to be helped the way I was being helped. Like a lot of the stuff was me, you know what I'm saying? And trying to deal with that guilt, you know, because we all make mistakes, we all go through things, whether self-inflicted or not, and we're gonna need people. But I don't want to put myself in a position where I'm asking or I need too much of my people, you know. So I want to make sure I'm actively picking myself back up. I'm actively getting myself back where I need to be, so I can carry myself. You know, I don't want to stay in this helpless position for my life, you know, like I'm not resting in this place. But yeah, it was a double-edged sword there. But when I got home, I was probably like maybe a year into what I would call this desert period. Like I think the first year was this period of overworking, overwhelm, dysregulation, stress. I'm trying to get this project out. I'm pushing myself to make things that I think will work. I'm trying to pull every favor on the planet to try to get this project to like move. I'm talking about this project Petals that I put out. Get this. The original title of the project was Starbirth. So my whole goal was like, I'm going to drop this project and I'm going to be a star. It's going to take off and I'm going to be like, yeah, this is like the birth of a star, you know, Star is Born vibe. So that I kind of put you in the headspace I was in. Everything was about achieving that goal, which, you know, isn't in itself a bad thing. But I think the way I went about it and the position that I put myself in to achieve it was the problem. I felt like everything I was doing was a reach. You know, I'm reaching out for favors. I'm reaching out for features. I'm reaching for like, okay, what's a strong visual identity that will like translate to like success? Reaching for the best brand collaborations, whatever. Everything was just like, yeah, I think I was just reaching. I was reaching in a lot of ways. And I remember I'd finished the project and, you know, I liked all the songs on it. You know, I definitely can't make myself put out something I don't like, but it didn't feel personal to me. And I had never put out a project that I didn't feel a strong personal connection to. I had stuff that, you know, if I heard it objectively, I'd be like, yo, this sounds like I like this. But I wasn't really bearing my heart. I wasn't really bearing my soul on it in the way that I like to do. You know, that's how I process things. That's how I connect with people and how I connect with myself. And I remember I'd finished the project and it didn't feel personal to me. In this mission of Starbirth, I left that. And, you know, there were parts of it that I look back on and I'm like, some of these things were good to do. Like a lot of it was, okay, I'm studying song structure. I'm learning to simplify. I'm learning to be concise. And I think there were great exercises in like honing my craft, you know? I think it was very, very valuable. It kind of stopped there. I did not take those lessons, at least at that time. I didn't take those lessons and then apply them to something that was, I could fully say is me. You know, it was maybe like 50% me or 75, you know, depending on the song. So, you know, I had the project and label things, waiting on clearances, etc. I just sat waiting for things to move. And eventually, this is when I was still in LA, I had to leave. I didn't have my own place. I, you know, was burnt out, not happy, and literally just could not survive on my own, to put it bluntly. That's a very, honestly, it was like embarrassing. Like I was embarrassed for the situation that I was in and embarrassed for needing to come home. But, I came home, got this project, and I just sat for a little bit, rested, started to kind of enter maybe the phase 2 of this desert period. Eventually, after some of my energy started to return, I had more potent things, more important things I needed to say. And that's when the project changed from Starbirth to Petals. And that kind of being this concept of like car pedals, gas pedals versus flower petals. And, I had my foot on the gas so hard that I burnt myself out. And then realized that, I had my foot so hard on the gas because I needed that to love myself. I needed to achieve these things to feel like I had worth. And that's when songs like Never Going Home Again came about. That's when songs like, Why, the second half of that came out. The songs Thank You, that really, Something in the Pavement. Songs that are way more personal. Songs that have way more like heart. Now I look back and it's like such a beautiful project to me because the first half is this super confident, like, yo, I'm about to be on, I'm going to the moon. You know what I'm saying? We taking this all the way to eventually breaking down around, the song I'm Okay, Something in the Pavement. And then you see this redirection of, okay, I'm gonna look at myself real hard and try to figure out like, okay, if I don't achieve my goals the way I want to achieve them, how can I still be happy? How can I still be fulfilled? It ultimately came down to, well, one, I need to like myself. I need to actually love myself in action. I need to find a new approach to my goals and my dreams and my ambitions. So I had finished this new version of the project, put it out, and I was done. I had done, a couple shows here and there. I did South by, a few other things, but I was like, I don't have anything in me to to do all the social content around it, to talk about it a ton. I felt like I was going to die. Like I really felt like I have nothing left. But it was hard because once again, I was like embarrassed. I'm like, I'm trying to be an artist and I have nothing to give. Like I just put out this project and I'm not even doing all the things that I want to do around it because I just have nothing. I have nothing. So that's kind of when I went into, I don't know, maybe phase 3 of this desert period where it was really just stillness and feeling a lot of pain that felt like was going on for a long time. I mean, I would just wake up and I would just be just tense, just like my body is on fire. I don't know what it feels like to be happy. Like I just completely forgot physically what that felt like to be regulated, to be at peace, to feel good things, I guess. I might have a day or two where like, oh man, like I feel better today. Like an oasis in the desert. It was so rare that those days stood out to me. I'm like, oh, like I feel happy to be alive today. This is a nice change. And then kind of right back into the the fire of just heartbreak on so many levels. Yeah. So it took a combination of a lot of things to get out of that. It took patience, it took community, my family, it took therapy, it took journaling, processing, and it took removing extra things, doing less, which I felt an immense amount of shame, like, pulling back from doing that project. I felt terrible that I wasn't doing it. Pulling back from really being creative in general, I felt terrible not creating things. But I had no choice. I had no choice if I wanted to bluntly, being alive. I had to make those sacrifices and also know that those things are part of me, but it isn't the whole of who I am. Like if I don't make another song, or don't feel inspired to make another song, that's okay. My value, that's where my value comes from. So yeah, I sat in that for a long time. I started this journey of building myself back up. I ended up reading 2 books early in this time. The first one was called Try Softer, and the second was Strong Like Water, by this woman. I think it's Andy Colbert. It's either Andy or Andy. I'll fill it in. She's a therapist, and it was my first step on relearning. I say relearning, but really like learning how to properly love myself. I think that's been something that I've struggled with for a long time. Like a lot of the things that I thought were things that I loved about myself, I really loved because it brought me opportunities and it brought me validation, external validation. But when my gifts or things that people like about me stopped bringing in those things in the way that I wanted them to, I stopped valuing myself. And that was really, really hard to deal with. I remember I was working on an early version of a song, and the line, I don't love myself that much, just came out. I'm kind of like freestyling, like melodies and lyric ideas. And like as soon as I said it, I was like, oh shoot, you really feel like this. You really don't love yourself that much. You really don't like yourself that much. And that, man, that was like, yeah, I mean, I had a moment. I'm getting like chills right now just thinking about that moment. Because I'd never been that honest with myself, or I was never able to put it that clear and that direct. You know, we have things that we know we don't like about ourselves. Or I wish I was more, I don't know, whatever. And I will point out and critique those things, but I think as a whole, I was like, oh, you don't like, you need this validation to even feel like you're worth liking or like loving, I would say 2 main takeaways that I really got. One was, all of the self-validation exercises and like, you deserve to be healthy and healed innately. Like you don't need to do anything to deserve those things as a human being. Like that is your right. And it's not only great for yourself, but great for, your community and the world to be a healthy, healed person. That was the first. And the second really was, I think for me personally, more challenging to put into action. And it was try less hard. And I think that's gone against everything that I grew up feeling like I needed to do. We all know, got to work hard to live, to eat, to be successful, etc. But I think some of the ways I was working hard was at the expense of my well-being, and also not knowing how to rest and like what rest truly meant. I had no idea that I was burnt out. I had no idea that I was not happy, or that I was depressed, or that I was falling into this pit of just self-hate and destructiveness. I had no idea because I had numbed myself to it. I kind of accepted it's going to be hard. This is going to suck. But on the other side, is all the success and validation and, all the things that I've like dreamt about since a kid. And this book was like, yo, like you need to listen to yourself, like listen to your body. Like I remember at that time I was like sleeping a lot, and then feeling guilty for sleeping. So it's like I'm resting, but then when I'm awake, I'm still not allowing myself to really accept the rest that my body is telling me it needs. I feel every day I'm like, yo, I gotta be writing, I gotta be making stuff, I gotta be creating, and nothing is there, and I'm beating myself up for it. I'm not allowing myself to like replenish. I'm not allowing myself to live a life. Like I was not living a life for the last few years, before I came home. Everything in my life was about making it. And if it didn't have to do with making it, I was not interested. Yeah, pushing back directly against the way I had been approaching my life up until this point. And I still struggle with that, but I've definitely taken a lot of big steps. And then I got into therapy and learned a lot of things about myself that I'm really excited to share, because I think it'll, I just enjoy talking and sharing parts of my life, but I think also it will be helpful to other people as well, who may be like me or have the same struggles, or some of the stuff I'll get into. Learning things about my childhood that made me look for validation in the ways that I look for validation. Self-shame, critiquing of myself, not knowing how to rest. I remember when I got into therapy, like I was in such a low place. That was like all I did that year was, like I said, I came home, read those books, got into therapy, and rested. And honestly, like, I feel like my life depended on it, and I'm very grateful that I could do that. I could afford to do that, because I know that's not the case for so many people. Being with my family, my parents, they honestly kind of had to force me to accept help. I remember they had said, like, hey, we know, it was my dad. He had told me one day, he was like, yo, I know you're doing what you're supposed to be doing with your life. And I know that's going to be, it's not conventional. So if you ever need anything, like, you can come home and we will support you. We will help you. We will, be here for you. And, I didn't want to need it. I really didn't want to need it. My pride was like, no, I'm gonna figure this out. I'm gonna push through this, and I'm gonna make $1 million or whatever. And it didn't happen. And looking back, I'm happy that it didn't happen that way, because I think it would have dug me even deeper into that way of thinking. Just like neglect all forms of happiness in order to find success, and then I've earned the right to be happy, But that hasn't been true for me, and that hasn't been a healthy way to live. And then about a year ago, I found out I might be on the spectrum. And I was talking about it with Redacted, and it was like everything lined up. Everything made sense. Started doing my own research. Everything lined up. Everything made sense. And then I went through this period of immense grief. And not grief because I'm on the spectrum, but grief because I have been beating myself up and critiquing myself and tearing myself down for things that I thought I could change about myself that I can't. For being sensitive, for having quirks or stemming things, or the list goes on and on. And then all the situations in my life since a kid, like I'm literally going through my whole childhood up until now, and like processing things that I went through, things that I struggled with, things that happened to me through this lens of that was an autistic boy trying his best. And that it broke my heart that I was so cruel to myself. Oh man. Man, my like idea of, yo, you just gotta try harder. You just gotta try harder and you'll like you'll get there. Like you'll change this thing about yourself, or you'll make it, you know? And what I had realized that younger version of me needed more than anything was just understanding and acceptance and like permission to not be neurotypical, you know? And that would have like released so much tension in my life. Like I just remember times in, middle school, high school, everything was tight. Everything was like locked jaw, and I'm trying to make it through this scenario. I'm trying to make it through this day, trying to, I don't like, as vague as it is, like trying to fit in. But the thing is, I didn't know why I even had to try to do that. Like, why do I feel different? Why does it seem like things that affect me don't affect other people? I think a big part of it was like growing up in a predominantly white area. I'm kind of chalking that all up to just racial differences and culture differences. But then even feeling that way amongst my black friends, like there's something different here. There's something, I don't know. I can't put my finger on it. When I learned that I was on the spectrum, it was something funny that happened. I was like, I remember a few years ago, I put out this project called Spectrum, and had nothing to do, I won't say nothing to do with being on the spectrum, but it was coming from a different perspective. That was me coming to terms with me being a very sensitive person, and each song kind of represent like a different feeling that I, experienced being a human being. Because at that time, I had begun to address the fact that I felt really insecure about my masculinity because I'm so sensitive, and I didn't like that thought. I didn't like that. In my mind, that was a contradiction. So I went into that project with the goal to validate the things that I feel and like process my feelings. And at the very end, like the last song titled White, I have this line where I say, we're all on the spectrum, which is true. We're all on the sexual spectrum. We're all on the, mental spectrum, whatever, all the things. And it was kind of me saying like, I don't know all the things, but I'm on the spectrum of life, So then when I learned I'm on the autism spectrum, it was like, damn, I was beginning to accept things about myself at that time that I didn't even know. And also it was just like right in front of my face the whole time. Like I had that project title and it always stuck with me. It really meant something to me. And then to be able to look back, and because it was so true, it was so emotionally true, that I've seen pieces of that project bleed into other parts of my life or get referred back to, which is really cool. So I'm like, damn, I learned I'm on the spectrum, and I had put out a project called Spectrum. Cool. Just a little beautiful moment. It was like God was telling me in advance so that I could do the things that I'm doing now. It was really cool. Yeah, if you ever heard Spectrum, give it a listen. It's a very special project to me. So when I learned that, like I said, man, it was like, oh my gosh. There's the one side of like, I wish I wasn't so cruel. But the other side was, why did you need to know this to give yourself grace in the first place? Like, yes, it helps a lot. It helps so much to know. Because now I'm able to do the things that I need to function. You know what I'm saying? Like there are people who are like me, who have practices and, ways that they maneuver through the world that I can learn from. And now that I have a basis of like knowing more about myself, I can go pursue those things, and that helps so much. But also I shouldn't need an excuse to love myself and to give myself validation. So I think the lesson now is like, for me, don't require an excuse to love myself. Don't require an excuse to validate how I'm feeling, you know? And like, yo, if you need to take some time back, take some time back. If you need to rest, because I get burnt out really quickly in social settings, you know? After an hour, 2 hours, I'm ready to leave. And I'm not talking about leave to go to the next place. I'm trying to go home and lay in my bed. And I remember feeling like, is this just me? Like, it felt like, why everyone else is just like, be out for 12 hours and be fine. And I'm just like disassociating at this event because like my social battery is just gone down to zero. And I'm shaming myself for it. I'm hating myself for that, you know? And now I'm like, oh, okay, like, yo, if you want to go out and you can only be out for 2 hours, who cares? Go out for 2 hours and go home. It is not that serious. Like, this is not a place where I need to be. Like, the whole point is to go out and have fun. You know what I'm saying? Like, and now it's become this whole thing where I'm burning myself out trying to just be like other people. So I think learning that about myself helped me get to grace and understanding quicker. And then also, like, there are going to be other things that I'm going to struggle with that I may not have the term for, you know, or I may not have the diagnosis for. And regardless, I need to validate that and address it directly, but also from a place of love and understanding, and not from a place of critique and like hate. Because there are countless people who don't ever get the diagnosis, but struggles are the same, you know, especially women and especially just people in color in general are underdiagnosed, and go through life trying to fit in, trying to like be what they don't know is just neurotypical behavior or, you know, standard, and are beating themselves up for it and are hating themselves for it. So being able to like accept that and get support where I need support. Looking back in that desert period, stern fly, in that desert period, I remember one day I was talking to my mom. I was like, I think I'm having a mental breakdown. And I remember saying it just like that. Like, we were sitting outside and I was like, I think I'm having a mental breakdown. Like, I'm not okay. Like, I'm sitting here right now and like, I'm okay. I'm not going to do anything, but I am not okay. I am like desperately hurt and desperately in pain. And I have no idea how to make it stop. I have no idea what I need to do for myself. And looking back, I'm like, oh, I was like, I don't know, maybe it's still, you still want to like call it a mental breakdown. If you want to call it a autistic burnout, you know, I don't know exactly where it would fall. But whatever term you want to call it, I was in crisis. And I think one thing that I'd never known, especially after, you know, learning more about mental breakdowns, autistic burnout, autistic meltdowns, is like they last for periods of time. You know, panic attacks. Like, I always thought, I grew up as a kid having panic attacks. You know, so I had the idea that like you'll feel something that happens, and then you come down from it, and you know it's a maybe a few hour thing. You know, going back to find out like, oh, I was not having panic attacks. I was having autistic meltdowns because I got overstimulated, and like my body is doing whatever it needs to do to try to self-regulate. So then after, you know, looking at research, it's like, oh, people will like go through, you know, mental breakdowns. They'll go through autistic breakdowns, whatever, for like months and years. And I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah, that makes sense. That's where I was at. That is where I was at. And I think within that, it takes away some of the shame for me of like being upset that I'm upset. You know, I can't even, it's hard to even let myself address the issue because I'm upset that I have an issue to address. So, I don't know. It's a lot of terms, and it can be a lot for myself, and it can be a lot for other people sometimes. It's really funny when I first found out and I started doing the research, and I'm having all these epiphanies, and I'm like replaying things of my childhood. I was like, oh, I see why people learn something about themselves, and then that becomes their whole personality. Like, I don't know. I feel like we see that a lot, and it's like funny at times, like, but I think now going through it, I'm like, oh, I get it, because it low key does. It's like you just discovered this whole missing puzzle piece of your life, and now you're like wanting to catch up, and then also you're excited to meet other people who are going through the same thing, and then that kind of just becomes your whole presence, as you're always talking about this. I get it. I think I want to be careful because I'm so far from being an expert on any of this. I'm still learning it for myself. I'm far from being an authority on any of this, but if I could be, I don't know, like, I'm kind of looking at this like companionship. Like, hey, if you got some information, send it my way. If I got some information, I'm gonna send it your way, and we can compare notes and, move through life a little bit better. That's my whole goal with me sharing these stories. When I found this out, the way I'd been thinking with my art was like, oh, yo, you could like make this a thing and get some fans. Isn't that like whack as hell? That was one of the first things I thought about. Was like, yo, how can you make this successful? Me being on the spectrum, how can I make that successful? That's dumb as hell. And that's whack as hell. I hate it. But once again, that is, I mean, if we want to talk about it, it is the consequence of living in a capitalistic society. But for me personally, my dream of like making it, like I said, all the things in my life during this desert period and things leading up to it was going into making it. So any bit of inspiration, any bit of something dope, a trend, I'm like, oh, how could this fit into my universe so I could like make it, I got this information about myself, and it was like, oh, this is like interesting. We could package this up and, make it. Stupid. But so I had to like fight against that and be like, yo, let's chill. Let's just learn and like, love ourselves and do all of that. And then whenever I choose to talk about it, let's do it in a way that is authentic and pure and not, trying to commodify it. So about a year ago, I found out I'm on the spectrum. I want to talk about what that means for me and what that means for my community. I've had to take a lot of time to be with myself and process. So last year I had started working on this project that involves a lot of different people, and I had hit this point where I started to like pull away. Honestly, just like disappeared to a lot of people. And, I would kind of, every so often, they might reach out, check in, see how I'm doing. And all I could really give was, I'm going through something right now, give me some time. I'll reach back out when I'm ready. Like, I'm okay. I just need some time. And honestly, what I was doing was processing this and dealing with a little bit of a burnout, like another burnout. I don't know if this is an extension of like, I mean, honestly, probably is, but an extension of like the autistic burnout that I experienced in that desert period a few years ago. But basically I was like, I want to listen to myself for the first time. And right now, like, my being is telling me, sit down. This project I was working on was very outward. I'm giving a lot to a lot of different people, and something I really do enjoy doing, but I want to make sure that I'm doing it in a way that is healthy for me. But I also know that doesn't absolve me of any type of responsibility. Like, if I'm reaching out to people, I'm working with people, and then I disappear, obviously that affects those people too. And I don't want to make it seem like I am removing myself from taking responsibility for that, leaving people kind of up in the air. So I'm in the process of navigating how to do that and giving myself grace without letting it just be an excuse to like not treat the people in my community the way I want to treat them. So I do want to apologize for that, for I guess like that disappearing. And yeah, I think especially for the people who are like in my life and that I care about and that I work with, I want to be able to communicate what I'm going through. Even if I don't want to share all the personal things, like at least give them a heads up so people aren't worried or they think I don't want to work with them anymore or I don't care about them anymore, whatever, So yeah, that's where I've been. I've been with myself mostly, processing, therapy, resting, and a lot of that processing, it might just be rest, it might be journaling, a lot of it is creation. But yeah, giving myself that space that I don't think I've ever been able to give myself, or knew that I really needed. I would kind of shame myself for feeling like I needed space. And that, that sucks. But once again, like, yeah, I want to hold myself to improving. I also want to make sure I'm not like setting the expectation that I'm going to do this perfectly. I'm going to make mistakes. And when I do, I'm open to apologizing to myself and apologizing to the people that I affect as well. But yeah, that's where I've been. I learned, kind of went through a breakdown period, learned I'm on the spectrum, and sat down to deal with that and figure myself out. As I did the work of resting, did the work of processing, that baseline slowly came down to a more regulated, peaceful place. And it's really interesting how gradual it was, because it wasn't like one day I was like, oh, like I feel way better. I feel way different than I felt yesterday. It was more like one day I was hanging out, kind of talking about what I was going through a year ago, what I was feeling a year ago. And I was like, wait a minute, I don't feel like that right now. Man, I'm so happy I don't feel like that. And I haven't felt like that for, several months. That was such a beautiful realization that I was making progress finally in the ways that I wanted to make progress with myself. That feeling of like, I'm never going to feel okay again was no longer something that I could entertain. Like, I knew that I'm going to make it through. I'm going to be okay. And I am okay. So as I stepped back into this regulated, more, stable place, that's when starting to come up to the surface.